What's up, guys? Welcome back. We are here with another guide in our series, God is Father, I Am Part of the Family. And so this week I have with us Pastor Gene, our very special guest here in the living room. Welcome to the living room, Pastor Gene.
Wow, I am honored.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. So we're super excited to have you. If you've not seen any of my videos so far, I ask all of my special guests one question, same question. Give us a fun fact about yourself.
A fun fact
Fun
about
fact.
myself. Okay. Well, I suppose maybe one of the funnest fun facts that I could share with you is that I did not know how to rightly pronounce my last name until I was 7 years old.
7 is what, like second grade?
Yes, it was like second grade.
There you go. So listen, if you've ever been confused about Gene or Paul and how you pronounce their last name, you are not alone.
That's right.
It's Gene himself,
Hey.
patriarch.
Another kind of similar fun fact, I was married 6 years before my mother-in-law knew how to pronounce my last name.
Awesome. There you go. Wow. Man, but see, now we all know Vermilion.
There you go.
We've learned it's a very valuable lesson. Well, Gene, thank you so much for joining us again for this week. So, guys, our big truth this week as we're walking through this series is the church is radically generous. The church is radically generous. And so as we look in Scripture, we see a couple of really kind of stories, verses that talk about this. And so we're in 2 Corinthians 8. And so this is the Apostle Paul writing this letter to the church at Corinth. And he says, I'm going to read verses 1 and 2. He says, "We want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches in Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part." Listen to that. In a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed into a wealth of generosity. And so we see that that's a picture of how the church is supposed to live. The church is radically generous. So we've got 3 big ideas I'm just going to walk through really quickly, and then we'll look to you, Gene, to kind of talk just practically about what a life like this looks like. And so big ideas just real quick. Number 1, everything we possess, we have been given to steward for God's glory. And so for you, that's everything material that you have, that's your time, that's your energy, everything you have is to steward for God's glory. That's number 1. Number 2 is our sacrificial generosity gives us the opportunity to make Jesus known. So we talk about that a lot, and our generosity gives us the opportunity to make Christ known. And then number 3, we see we give because Jesus gave his life for us. And so that is a response. Our generosity is a response to something that Jesus has already done for us. And so as we're looking at generosity is what it means to be a generous church, and really individuals as part of the church, as part of the family, that's our whole series. How can we be generous with everything we possess? What are ways we can use our time, our money, our energy to steward for God's glory?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me start off by saying, in going along with the verse that you quoted there, how it talked about their abundance of joy.
Yeah.
You know, it seems really counterintuitive that you would be joyful about giving, your time, your energy, your money, and stuff. I mean, we struggle with that, don't we? But the fact of the matter is, once you develop a discipline in that area, you find that you get really excited about it. When you start seeing how God can take a little bit and multiply it, kind of like the little boy who gave two loaves and 5 whatever it was, loaves and fishes, however many, and then he multiplied it and it fed a whole 5,000 people or whatever. There's something about that just is infectious, and it gets exciting, and stuff to see how God could take a little bit and use it in a great way.
Yeah.
So how can we take what we possess and utilize that to be a steward of those things? Well, first of all, let me just say I don't like the word possess, although I understand the question. It's a good question. I don't like the word possess because the word possess infers ownership. And the fact of the matter is, we don't own anything.
That's true, yeah.
Over in Psalm 24:1, it says, "The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, even every person that we belong to Him. He's Creator God, so everything. If we belong to Him, then certainly everything we possess or have belongs to Him too."
Yeah.
And so, one of the things we need to understand, biblically speaking, is that we don't own anything. We are stewards of what God has entrusted into our care.
Right.
And a steward is not someone who owns, but someone who manages that which belongs to someone else.
Yeah.
So whether it's our time, our energy, our finances, anything, all of those things belong to the Lord, and we've been given a responsibility to manage those things. And so that's important for us to understand.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think one of the things that really helps us is to learn to have an attitude of gratitude, to really be grateful for all that God has really blessed us with. And listen, living in America, we have way more than the average person in the world has, and should be grateful for it. But you know what? We all struggle with this. We're not satisfied a lot of times.
Yeah.
We're not content with what God's given us, and so we always want something more. We think, if I have this, I'll be satisfied, or if I have that, I'll be happy, or something. Things don't satisfy us.
That's right.
It never does. And so we need to learn, though, to be grateful and content with what God has given to us, and to recognize that God is our provider. He's the one who provides what we need. And then another thing is that we really need to take our finances, our time, our energy before the Lord and say, God, what do you want me to do with this? You've entrusted me to manage these things. I want to be a faithful manager of these things and utilize them, make the most of these things. How do I do that? And how do you want me to invest my money? How do you want me to invest my time? How do you want me to invest my energies?
That's good.
I think those things will help us be good stewards.
That's really good. So tell us, like, you kind of personally. So how have you seen that play out in your life? How are ways that you've been able to see generosity be an opportunity to make Jesus known?
Well, I've seen that in many different ways. For instance, well, let me just say this, and I say this to my shame. I was 34 years old before I ever started tithing. And you might say, what? In fact, I had been in ministry for 4 years by that time. And I'd been unfaithful in that. And when it really comes down to, it was fear, it was unbelief, it was lack of faith that somehow God really was my provider and would take care of me. And somehow I thought I could do better with 100% than He could do with 90%, But what I kept seeing as a pattern was, at the end of every month, there was not enough money. There was more month than there was money. And it just seemed like we were always trying to play catch up and play catch up. And finally, God just really got through to my heart and convicted me, and began to start honestly tithing. And it seems counterintuitive again, but what I discovered is that it seemed like my money went further. I was able to do more with 90% than I could with 100%.
Because you're being faithful.
Because I'm being faithful, and God
obedient.
honors that. He blesses that.
That's good. So Gene's given just several really specific examples, but overall, a life like that, it's hard. I mean, generosity is hard, and some of that is our pride, our selfishness, our desire to hold really tightly to what we think we own, what we think we have. How do you continue to pursue it, even when maybe you don't feel like it, or maybe when the cost is just particularly great?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, it's hard when you're first starting. Once you build a discipline in it, man, it gets easy, and then it gets exciting, To give you an idea, so we started out with tithing, and then God began to encourage us to give to other things, people who serve in ministries and stuff like that. Back in the mid-'90s, we went through a 3-year building program. And I remember back then, of course, I was on staff, and certainly we want to be, leading the way and want to set a good example. Now, we didn't tell anybody what we were giving, but basically, God gave us, we felt like God had given us a figure that He wanted us to give to the building program. And yet I was uneasy in my spirit about it, not about giving, but I just felt like maybe that's not exactly, that's what I could figure out on paper.
Sure.
And so I took it to the Lord, and I felt like the Lord said, I want you to double that amount. The cool thing about that was that in those 3 years, we never went without a meal. We always paid our house note. We never missed a payment or anything like that. Our kids had medical care, everything, food. I mean, God took care of it all. He took care of it, which gets really cool and exciting, when you see how God comes through and those kinds of things. So, at first, it may seem hard. It's counterintuitive. You feel the pain, so to speak. But man, once you really begin to learn how to give and be generous and stuff like that, then it starts getting exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so you've lived a long life. You're talking about things that you were doing in the mid-90s. I was being born in the mid-90s. So you have quite a bit of just experience, and you've seen the way that the Lord has been faithful. So for a middle school, high school student who's hearing this, who's starting out saying, I want to do that, I want to pursue that, what's a way they can begin to live in this way?
Yeah, a good question, great question. So I think the first thing that I would say is that first understand that being radically generous is not about how much money you give or how much time you give or how much of your energy. It's more about what is really a sacrifice for you. And I'll give you an illustration. Back over in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 to 44, Jesus is sitting there, and he's there at the temple, and the people are coming by, and they are putting their gifts, their offerings, their tithes into what is called the treasury. And there were rich people coming in, and they were dumping a lot of money, into the treasury and stuff, and Jesus doesn't say a word about it. And then all of a sudden, this little widow woman shows up. She comes by, and she deposits 2 mites, which is less than a penny, into the offering. And when she walks away, Jesus goes bananas. He praises her. And the disciples are like, what are you talking about? I mean, she only gave 2 mites and stuff. Jesus said, yeah, but that's all she had. She gave everything that she had. And man, he was impressed with that little woman. So if we're not doing the little things or the things that, if we're not faithful in the little things, we're not going to be faithful in the things that are really big.
Well, that is so good and really helpful, I think, in helping us even kind of take some first steps. And so kind of next steps for you guys as you're watching this, as you're in your group and you're kind of talking about these things. Something that Jean said I think is really, really good. It's not about the amount. And so maybe you were in middle school and you're like, I don't have a job. Like, I don't have any money. Like, maybe I get $40 for my birthday, and like, maybe I don't. I don't know. But you have something that you can sacrifice. And so what is that time? Is that energy? Is that service somehow? And so build the habit, the discipline of that now, because then being generous with money will come later. And so talk about those things in your groups. What are those things that you have that you can sacrifice, that you really can begin now to pursue a life of radical generosity? And so as we close, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, I'd like to go back to something you had asked about, generosity is hard, Well, there's a lot of things in life that are hard. True. But we do them anyways because they're the right things to do.
That's good. Well, Jean, thank you so much for joining us in the living room today. I think this has been super helpful, super practical as we look at what it looks like to be a church that's radically generous and to be, for us as individuals, a part of that family. So thank you so much for coming, for talking with us about it. Guys, on that note, we love you and hope you have a great week.